What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Jam Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me as always is Mr. Brian Schultz. Wonder Man, the show that we talked about in the past about perhaps not being too excited about it because of the track record of Marvel and how they release their shows and what sort of publicity they do for their shows, the way it's released in terms of, and I think we spoke about it in previous shows, how they sort of choose to release these joints. Some of them is 1 week at a time, we release two, and then 1 week at one at a time every week. This one, they just gave it to you all. And it sounds familiar to how they treated Echo, how they treated Ironheart, and now Wonder Man. But the difference here is that Wonder Man is actually a hit. And we're going to talk about sort of these differences and what's going on at Marvel and and I mean, this is a discussion that we've talked about for some time in terms of who's a person saying yay or nay and sort of deciding what's good and what's not. Because apparently we believe, they didn't give it much thought as to whether or not this show was going to be good or not. They didn't believe in their own project based on how they promoted this. There was probably no promotion. It was certainly on the radar.
Minimal.
And that was a big hit. So, Brian, when did you watch it? I watched it last night. I mean, I've seen a couple of episodes during the week, and then I finished it off last night so in preparation for this show so that we can talk about it. But when did you see it and what did you think about it and what people have been saying? Let's discuss.
Yeah, this is a really interesting discussion and not a show. It's funny, when this show was coming out, I kind of felt like this was the kind of thing you and I might spend 5 minutes on in a Void episode because of the way Marvel had prepped us for it with the lack of promotion. And it was almost like you had to squint to know it was still on the calendar. And then I kind of started seeing the buzz that like critics, who had not seen the full show, they were shown the first few episodes, were like, this is good. They were like, this is refreshing stuff from Marvel. And I was like, am I getting got with this? Like, is there some kind of like Disney's making a little push to sort of pay some people to say good things about it? And so I sat down and I wanted watching it over 2 days because, as you said, they dropped the whole thing. And this is kind of like almost not sitcom, but like old school length TV, right? Where it's like the episodes are like 25 minutes, if you X out the credits and all this sort of stuff. So you really can kind of crank through a bunch of these. So I watched it probably the Wednesday and Thursday of this past week. And I really enjoyed it. It is different. It's derivative. I do think it probably helped that I had no expectations when I sat down to watch it. And the Marvel Spotlight tag kind of lets you know, like, hey, this is not really that. It's connected, but not connected. Like, you don't really need a lot of background other than if you don't know who Ben Kingsley was in the MCU, it's probably the only thing you had to really be aware of. And it was a different type of hook. Right? It wasn't really a comic book hook. It was more like a meta Hollywood life of an actor hook. But man, they got me along for the ride. And at the end of the day, I got to the end of it and I kind of just looked at it. And I think my overall take is, I think of it almost like, I've always had this in my head since I was a kid, and my dad, who loved movies, kind of told me this and it stuck with me, where he had shown me Star Wars for the first time. And I've been totally engrossed, and my dad, who loved films, was kind of like, he's like, if you listen real close, and you look real close, the script's not that good. He's like, but if Alec Guinness is the one telling you the lines, it kind of doesn't matter. And I felt like in this show, like, Yaya is so good and Ben Kingsley are so good, it almost doesn't matter what else is happening because those two guys are just allowed to cook, and they have this weird chemistry that you would never think could be possible. I could just watch them do stuff and I'd be happy. And at the end of the day, just reminding me that, like, when Marvel kind of gets out of the way and lets talented performers act and just chew on a part, good things can happen and we can buy back into the superhero of it all at the end. And so I do highly recommend this show, just not really for Marvel fans, almost just for like, if you want to have fun with a derivative type of wink, wink Hollywood show that has a little bit of superheroing in it, this is a real nice, easy
Yes.
watch. And I had fun. And I will say I left this show, and we'll talk about the ending and all that sort of stuff, and then connections to the comics and the liberties they took. But I would legitimately welcome Yaya and Wonder Man back to something else MCU in the future.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I certainly was entertained by their performances. Yaya and Ben Kingsley, which I think they did a masterful job in terms of sort of giving us the wink, wink. Everybody knows that he was the Mandarin and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but their connection and their sort of relationship evolved into something that you sort of had to watch and see where it went, and the instances of the powers. Because I was never thinking about the powers, but when it started, you're like, oh snap, what's going to happen, right? How is this going to end? And we'll talk about it later. I mean, the best, I think, scene or the visual representation of how his power can get out of control was he was at the Hollywood studio and he found out certain information that sort of led him to sort of exert that power. And I thought it was beautifully represented and visualized. To me, I think probably like second or third episode before he got the call that they got a callback. I was really connected to his sentiment and feeling about how people get opportunities. And I think Yaya is going to get a lot more opportunities after this because there was a range of a range that he displayed in his performance here. And it's funny because I noticed him I don't think a lot of people remember this, but he first started out, or the first time I saw him was on the Get Down. It was is a Netflix show, and it's set in the Bronx. And he's sort of like a hustler, the big gangster, I guess, in the town or whatever. And that's when I first noticed him. And I think he was amazing. I think he was actually very amazing, and everyone, I think, on the show did a stellar job in their performances for this show. And it's sad, I think, for Marvel to give it the treatment that they had given it. Because perhaps, it seems to me like they perhaps didn't even look at, like, how can you look at this show and say it's not good and try to promote this show as hard as you can? It sort of just signifies to me that they really disregarded this and I think we'll probably talk about it a little bit later in terms of what this could have been. This could have ended up like Batgirl, and it would have been ashamed.
Literally.
Yes.
Literally. We'll talk about, we can bring that in. And I think the backstory of production here is actually really interesting, especially when you factor in who's involved, because this is the brainchild of Destin Cretton, who, of course, is the director of Shang-Chi, will be the director of Spider-Man Brand New Day, supposedly is going to direct a future Avengers movie, was supposed to direct Kang Dynasty. And one could make the case that in this sort of post-Endgame era of Marvel, he's one of the three kind of most he's one of the three creators who have sort of remained most in tune with what has made Marvel successful. So if you kind of say like John Watts does No Way Home, so you count him, you say Coogler still, obviously, and then you'd probably say Cretton because of the way Shang-Chi was received and the way Marvel seems to treat him internally in terms of giving him these big assignments. But then I watched this show and I was like, yeah, he does have this sense for, as you say, like how to make it funny without being too silly, how to extract a performance from actors. Like I think like one of the strengths of Shang-Chi is like when you watch Tony Leung and Michelle Yeoh and like some of the supporting cast where you're like, whoa, like they, it's almost like they're overqualified for the role that they have, but they're doing a
Yeah.
lot in those parts. And so it it feels all the more surprising that Marvel basically attempted to bury this, given that it was coming from his
Yeah.
hands. And then he also was partnered with a showrunner and a writer whose background was actually in 30 Rock and Community, which is like two of the most successful sitcoms on NBC of the last, 25 years. So two guys with that pedigree, and literally Marvel was at the threshold of just getting rid of this show entirely. And thankfully they didn't, but it is a strange tale to consider. Remember, this show was announced way back. Like this show was part of like one of the original incarnations of the Disney Plus flood them with
Yeah.
content era. And then you get the writer's strike. If you remember, there was a stuntman who died like in the production
Wow.
of this at one point. So that shut that down. So yeah, there's definitely a sense. And in fact, Andrew Guest, who is the co-creator with Cretton, said, yeah, he's like, quote, it could have been a tax write-off for Disney. I know for a fact the people who are producing this show were fighting their beeps off to make sure we came back and finished this weird melancholy show that, was a pretty big swing for them, end quote. So, I mean, he makes it sound like there was an active conversation about just completely getting rid of this. So, and yet now it's here, it's a hit, it's another +1 for Cretton. And as I said to you, as we're looking at Spider-Man in the future, I'm like, some guy, like we talk about the Russos, and some guys just have a thing for certain content. And like this guy is starting to build a little bit of a resume where you're like, if he's involved in the Marvel project, I think you have to
Check it
kind
out.
of elevate your expectation a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a shame, man. Cue Nick Cage and The Rock
Shame on them!
for thinking that this was another Ironheart or another Echo or something that they believed that wouldn't work. The fact that they almost wrote it off as a tax write-off is upsetting to know, because it just gives me this sense that the people in charge of this, man, they don't care. They don't care. It's all about it's turned into Hollywood now. It hasn't evolved into, because at the beginning it was about the heroes and their situations and their stories. Now it's about who they got in the movie or who they got in this role.
Mm. I think the Echo and the Ironheart thing is actually really topical to this because it's clear that Marvel viewed those three shows the same. Like we can tell that because of how they were promoted and how they were
Yeah.
dropped, because it's different than how they handled Loki and Wanda. So they cannot deny to a camera that they viewed this any
Yeah.
differently, because it was like one trailer. It comes out in January with no fanfare. All the episodes come at once, and it's exactly the same as what they did with the other two shows. Why do you think this one really works in a way that, quite honestly, those two shows don't? Because those two shows are not great, and they're not great watches.
I think isn't a lot of baggage. With Echo, you have Daredevil and the things that happened with Echo in her emergence into having her own show. Ironheart being in Black Panther. With Wonder Man, there is just like no expectation. You don't know what this is until you actually see it. And what you saw was completely different. Like if this would have been a standalone, Brian, we haven't had superhero movies or whatever, and this would have been the first thing we see, this would have been a different sort of reaction and I guess sort of expectation. I think they would have promoted it differently. I think they gave up on this, obviously, right?
Mhm.
So I think that has to do with it because Wonder Man, when I was going in, the only expectation it was that, I'm gonna watch it because of, what we do. And I like superhero films. I'll give anything superhero a shot to see how they execute it and what the story is. But that was it in terms of how I approached watching this. I didn't get a feeling of I have to. There was no homework really, other
Yeah.
than we know about Trevor Slattery, and that's minimal. All we know is Iron Man 2, that and I guess the short film that they did when he escaped or when they broke him out.
Well, and then Shang-Chi. And I want to come back to this because Destin Cretton clearly has a fascination with this character, and he winds up basically completing the arc, a very unlikely arc for Ben Kingsley in the MCU. Maybe we'll see, but so hold that thought. The no baggage point is the one I want to hit on because it's exactly what I would have said. It is unconstrained by other stuff, and I think it kind of constantly goes to this challenge in the MCU of what is the right balance, right? Because on the one hand, you and I have this conversation, and you always say like a lot of times when you watch these projects and the credit scenes, you're most interested to know where you're going next, right? So effectively, you're saying, I want the baggage, like I want the connectivity. Then you see this, and you're kind of reminded, like, well, sometimes it's great not to have the
Hmm.
connectivity, and not, and so in a weird way, like this show chooses, if you know the Wonder Man comics background, this show kind of ignores a lot
Hmm.
of that. Like there's a version of this show where they lean heavily into Simon Williams' connections to Tony Stark, Simon Williams, connections to the West Coast Avengers, and they really kind of make it he's part of this bigger whole that you're already sort of familiar with. They kind of just don't touch that. The only thing they really bring in from the comics for Yaya's version is he's an actor, which is true to the comics. He does become an
Yeah.
actor, and this idea that he sort of conducts ionic energy and what he can do with that energy, right down to the, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, but his ability to simulate
Hmm.
flight. They pay homage
Yeah.
to that at the end of
Yeah.
this show. They kind of show you a version. So I'm curious, like you're kind of implying they got that right. I tend to agree. I think if this had started out as like a implication that he is made the way he is or is bitter because of a rivalry with Tony Stark and we don't see Robert Downey, I feel like this show immediately takes a step backward. But I'm curious to see as we go forward how fans react to like, hey, we have a Simon Williams who is pretty detached from his comics legacy other than these two qualities, and we're taking him forward in a new direction. Like there are other characters we could say if you did that with, we'd be up in
Hmm.
arms. Right? Like we just had a conversation about the X-Men where it's like, and I've been making fun of the Halle Berry Storm where it's like they act like Storm has no backstory, right? If they did that again, I think we would lose our minds and be like, what are you
Hmm.
doing not honoring Storm's comics legacy, right? But here it seems to actually work. So it's an interesting choice. And I think you're right. I think it allows them freedom where we're not, even though Ben Kingsley was in an Iron Man movie and a Shang-Chi movie, we're not searching for the characters from those movies in this show. And I think it helps them just kind of do their
Yeah.
thing.
A lot of thoughts going through my head regarding this show and Yaya's performance.
Yeah, let's go there. That's a good place to go.
I mean, we touched on it a little bit on his performance. His, I would say, journey towards being a success and where his motivations come from was something of a, I wouldn't say mystery, but something I was wondering about, like, why does he want to be an actor? And I just, this approach of giving you pieces, giving you backstory in at the right time to sort of understand what his journey's been like, why he's so sort of obsessed kind of, in terms of wanting to be an actor. And it came from someone. The way they did this, I was waiting for something to happen to his father, like, because it's just because obviously he passed away, and I was sort of thinking it was going to be shown how that happened, right?
Mhm.
And they didn't do any of that, but they certainly gave you the moments where or that moment where his father sort of places that belief in him, or what he believed his father believed he could be, because of what he's seen from him in the past. I wish it would have been dope to see him act in that play that his father saw him, and his father
Oh, yeah.
watching him and being like, "Wow, this was amazing." I think, but he expresses it to him while they're having lunch or having something to eat, and he talks to him about it. His connection to his family was also something that I think I enjoyed quite a bit. Um,
Yep. And that appeared to be one that they went to some painstaking detail to make accurate. If you look at the casting choices, if you look at like the food and the layout at the birthday party, like
Authentic.
we've been talking about the details, and this felt like a show where like they paid attention to tried to pay attention to a bunch of those details, like in those moments. And yeah, like it definitely humanizes him. Like you have this view of where he's come from and how he doesn't fit in with his family, but then is loved by his mom, obviously. So you kind of have that like tension, and then with his brother. So I think I want to come back to this later on, because I feel like what they did here is just like a template, I feel like, for what they could do with Disney Plus elsewhere. But like, Yaya famously referred to his work on Aquaman as clown work, right? This is the same guy, right? Who very honestly said, you just have to get over yourself, understand what movie you're in. And if you're playing Black Manta with this giant helmet on your head, like, it is what it is, but it's not where you're going to basically flex as an actor. I would love to hear what he would describe this role as, because I would actually argue he's flexing in a lot of this show. Like he is channeling a meta view of what I would imagine to be countless people in Hollywood trying to break in. And I have to say, like, I enjoyed him getting fired from American Horror Story at the start of the show, because I imagine that to be so many more actors than we know who have these tiny roles and just completely think that they are Marlon Brando in those scenes, saying one line, and they just bog down an entire production and are impossible to be around. I bet that is like true for way more people than you'd want to ever admit or know. So I found that to actually be like kind of riveting as a hook, like I said, to kind of get me into like, okay, he isn't just an actor, and he's a struggling actor, but he's actually struggling because he's kind of like bigging. He's like Mr. Big when it comes to these. He just doesn't understand like where he is in his career, what he's doing. But then you watch him act, meaning Yaya act in the part, and you're like, he's really good at this. Like, it's hard. You can't look away at like what he's doing and what he's saying. And I said to you, like, I think he has one of the best voices in Hollywood today.
Has he been like, I could hear his voice in a lot of different things. Like, I'm amazed that he hasn't been in Invincible and stuff like that. There's just so many voices.
Yeah, I was thinking like, yeah, exactly. You think about like, I know like Aaron Pierre did Mufasa, but like that, like a Scar, or like even like if you did it's sacrilege to say a Darth Vader remake, but you know what I mean? Like those type of voice only roles where like the playboy like James Earl Jones made famous. He has that kind of voice. But, he has done, this is a guy who was nominated for an Oscar for Trial of the Chicago 7, who won an Emmy in the genre, right, for Dr. Manhattan in the wild. So like he is a prestige guy, but it's also felt like he's never totally taken center stage. It's always felt like, I think in part because like Black Manta wasn't quite maybe what it set out to be. Morpheus certainly wasn't. So like there's been a couple of big big paycheck choices that kind of didn't really turn out to be the thing. And ironically, I don't know if this will be that for him, but this is clearly his best chance because he's established, I think, a compelling character that can now fit into other things that Marvel wants to do if they want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I sort of tend to look at how Wonder Man was treated, and I'm talking about the show. And if I'm Yaya, I feel a certain way
That is
about it,
true.
you know?
Yeah.
Like if they want me to come back, okay, what do the dollars look like now? You know?
Yeah, but I think if Destin Cretton's your director and he
True.
says like, hey, I need, I feel like he would come
For
back
him,
for
yeah,
that
yeah,
for sure. You know what I mean? So there's that. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like I said, I think it's been a rare thing in the last 7 years where we've been introduced to a new character in Marvel where we got to the end of it and I felt like I'm legitimately, if he pops up on screen, like if he popped up on screen in an Avengers movie as like, hey, we got to go see this guy for the ionic energy, I would smile. Like I would be
Oh,
like,
yes.
cool, I'm
Yeah,
excited.
yeah.
What's he going to do? You know what I mean? And I haven't felt that way about
And
a lot of
how
these
he's
characters.
going to react, because how he reacts to these moments where, because he gets nervous, he gets anxious, and that anxiety and that nervousness transforms or calls upon his powers inadvertently, and something that he sort of has to control.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting how he, I guess, handles that, and how he transforms, perhaps, or evolves. I would say evolve from how he is now to how, because right now, look at what he attempted. You know what I'm saying? He fronted like, and he took care of everybody. He took care of everybody, so that there's like, he didn't misuse. He set the other dude up for life while still accomplishing his mission of getting his friend who sacrificed himself for him. So it'll be interesting to see, because now he can take flight. So it'll be interesting to see if he's the same guy in terms of how he approaches situations.
It's one of the best finales Marvel has done.
Yes.
In anything. I was actually dreading when I got to the end of the second to last episode and he has an incident. I was like, oh no, are we going to do a superpowered showdown with the Department of Damage Control in the streets? And it's just not, it's going to ruin kind of what we've set. And instead, the finale is this completely satisfying focus on friendship, right? Of these two guys who, this is what I mean by, I don't understand. I want to know why Destin Cretton is so fascinated by the Ben Kingsley, Trevor Slattery character, because this is a character that is very polarizing, was very polarizing when Shane Black used him the way he did in Iron Man 3. Some people love Iron Man 3, some people do not. I am in the category of do not as time has gone on.
I mean, I still enjoyed his performance.
But oh no, that's not a Ben Kingsley, but it's more what Shane Black did to the character of the Mandarin for the purposes of his film is a very controversial choice. And Shane Black famously at a convention, when he was challenged about it, laughed at the question being asked and basically was like, you could never do anything like a comics accurate Mandarin, meaning the way the Mandarin is portrayed and drawn originally is sort of racially insensitive. And then Destin Cretton came along and said, well, actually, you can do it. You just have to modernize it and be more sensible and get one of the best living Asian actors alive to do it. But he then hung on to this Slattery character. He like took that from Iron Man 3 and said, I'm going to do something with this. And I was like, who thinks that? Who thinks that? Because like Slattery in Shang-Chi is like nice little comic relief, but it's kind of like he doesn't add an enormous amount to the movie. He's just there for like kind of kicks and laughs and his little furry friend. But in this show, it made me feel like, did Destin Cretton have this plan for this
That
guy
would be a
all
good
along? Where
interview.
like an 82-year-old Ben Kingsley was going to be like an incredible co-pilot on this show, and then was going to get a moment where literally he pays off Iron Man 3. Like improbably he pays off Iron Man 3. And I'm like, how did they do that in a way that I actually didn't think was possible? And then it sets the stage, as you said, for I think one of the most brilliant like 5 minutes of superhero stuff we've seen, which is Simon Williams doing Simon Williams things, true to his spirit as an individual and to his acting skills, leading to using his powers for his friend. And I was like, that's actually really, really cool. Like that could have been 100 different things that looked a lot worse and been a lot bigger on screen. And the fact they did it this way, I just felt like it was like a chef's kiss on the end of the series.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has a lot of rewatchability. I can watch this again just to pick up on certain things in this.
I also already found that I recommended it to several non-Marvel fans as like a, hey, you might like this show. Ignore the fact that it looks on the surface like it's a Marvel thing. Like you might just legit like this show. And that's rare.
Yeah.
Rare that like, that harkens back to, like I said, when we were weirdly in the heyday of Marvel, there were a lot of those movies where you're like, hey, I know you're not a superhero person, but like Winter Soldier.
You gotta watch this show.
Check it out. You know what I mean? Like check it out. Like, I'm not saying this is that. I'm just saying that mindset of a wider audience can actually sit down and get into this.
It's certainly not Winter Soldier because obviously, there's a different sort of situation, right? Less drama and less stakes. But I think the connectivity of the human perspective, it applies to many in their quest to achieve certain goals. And perhaps barriers placed in front of them that they're, attempting to overcome. And at each turn, even though they overcome it, there's still these things that live with them, these feelings until the eventuality of that goal being reached. And some people don't even reach those goals, but even after reaching these moments of the belief of success with the callback, going to this dude's house to sort of read and stuff like that, there's still those moments of doubt. There was this instance of the feeling that you get when you're watching, what's that? The Boys. Like, oh, snap. Happens here, right? In this show.
I bet.
Then you realize what it is, but still, how they pull it off.
Yeah.
It's, I think, brilliant in how they did that.
This is a good example of a little bit of using famous people and cameos in a way that actually kind of fits versus just being like, hey, look who we got, right? So Joe Pantoliano, everyone's that guy for decades, appears as himself in a pretty funny sidebar. Yeah. Josh Gad, and we should talk a little bit about the Doorman episode.
But I enjoyed it.
I mean, that's a real swing. That episode felt like we came this far, we might as well just go off the platform dive and see if we can land this one. You know what I mean? Like, but he's pretty good in that episode, kind of as himself. The director, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Zlato Buric, who plays Von Kovac, who people would have seen actually as the dictator in Superman. Same guy. Okay. he does a nice job of sort of imitating some real life directors. I think he's supposed to be like Werner Herzog was one of the people he's like patterning on. And as you said, like the family, like the brother, like the little roles they get, it's pretty well chosen. Like nobody's mailing it in. Like nobody's kind of, and even again, I'm going to mispronounce his name, I think, but Arian Moayed, who's the agent, the Department of Damage Control agent, who's pursuing Simon Williams, like he does a pretty good job without overstepping as sort of that type of character. So. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I said, it's just one of those shows where like I don't feel a drop
There's
off.
a healthy
Like I don't feel
balance
like
throughout.
like when we're going scene to scene or we're spending time here and there, I don't feel like all right, I gotta wait till we're on, back to Simon. You know what I mean? There's not that feeling. It's just the show has like a nice consistency to it. And then even when the Doorman swing comes, which is sort of unexpected, I still feel like I'm bought in enough to the show where I'm like, all right, like I'll see where this goes. And then, of course, you wind up realizing it's the backstory to something kind of important and seemingly simple to the Wonder Man production. You're like, oh, that's why they did all that. But they do the episode with care to where I'm just like, okay, I'm in a little vignette, almost like Werewolf by Night. I'm like in a little vignette for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Great. I'm okay.
It's the details in that you sort of understand Simon's hesitancy and his secrecy to trying to break in and not let anyone in on his secret. And so you understand his hesitancy with not letting anyone find out what he is or what he's capable of.
Which I don't think he doesn't know everything he's capable of, which is part of what makes he knows things happen that are not good in certain situations. But it's not until the very end of the show that there's any sign that he has any awareness of how to channel or harness any of it. So I think we're still left with this idea of like, no one, including him, necessarily knows the limit of what he can do, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Can I talk about the template? You want to do that here, the future? If Marvel is smart?
Sure.
Because this has been a hit. This has been a top 5 show on all of streaming for the first week, which is rare that a Marvel show can say that. As we told you, Daredevil did not have a single episode make the top 10. Daredevil did not have a single episode make the top 10. And Wonder Man is in the top 5. So think about that for a second. With no promotion.
That's crazy.
Compared to how much promotion Daredevil got.
That's crazy shit.
So people
Again, shame on them for believing this wasn't a thing.
Let's start with that, because I would argue this show inadvertently, and I say inadvertently because it's not connected to this, inadvertently has done the thing that we have been clamoring for the Mutant Saga. Right here is a show that is largely self-contained, providing the origins, motivations, and depth to a new character introduction, to where if you were to watch this show and Simon Williams pops up in a future big screen movie, you don't need his story because you've seen it. You can do this. And by the way, there's no way this show is that expensive because there's not that many effects. There's not that many superpower fights. So you can introduce mutants just like this. And I think it would be powerful for Disney Plus, and I think it would be enhancing for the Mutant Saga. But as you say, given how the people in the room clearly thought of this show going in, are they smart enough to recognize what this show actually has handed them as maybe a way forward to do things with other new characters?
It's certainly the template that they should use. And again, there has been rumor of them attempting to work on multiple projects for the X-Men. And this would be obviously a way to sort of do something. And listen, Marvel has done this already. They took a risk in doing something new and trying something new, especially with their movies. This is a time to take a risk again with a group of individuals who are not just simply a team. They are individuals who have individual abilities, who have, although perhaps have that same similar anxiety and stress because they may not know what may be going on with themselves.
I mean, that's very mutant, right? This idea that he has this childhood trauma because of powers he doesn't understand how he got or how to use them, right? And it leads to bad things around him. I mean, he winds up being ostracized. I mean, that's very X-Men to me. Like watching this show, I was like, they're kind of actually writing a story which we've read many times in that corner of the universe.
I would be pounding my fist on the table like, yo, look at Wonder Man and let's do this for everybody else. It is what it is. It's what you just called it, a template for what they can do with the X-Men. And if they go in with this short-sightedness of the X-Men are a team and that's how we should betray him, then I'm saying, like, I'll be like, yo, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know.
Yeah, but then it's like if they try to force the backstory, too much of it into one movie, now it's going to get cluttered. Now it's going to feel rushed, right? That's what I'm saying. Like here, like I said, we've done the groundwork. Like we know what we need to know about Simon Williams' origin to where you can take him in these directions and be freed of that. And it's like, you can do that with Beast. You can do that with Gambit. You can do that with even, if you want to do it with Bishop, like you could pick your character and realize that, look, audiences came to watch this not because there was a bunch of CGI and superpowered fights and like cosmic adventures. They came to watch it because there's actors cooking and there's fun, balanced storytelling, but there's a purpose. And like the end of it, you felt like you grew with the leads. And I'm like, that's all we're asking for kind of the origins of our mutants, I think. So I couldn't get out of my head when I got to the end of the show.
There has been some talk about him being a mutant, actually. Or them.
I mean, they kind of write him as that. That's what I said. Like the writing is very similar to that. Yeah, like that. They don't really tell you exactly how he.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering.
Who he is.
Let me ask you this, Brian. Did you get a chance to listen to JC about how he received that? I know he said there was one episode he didn't like, or it was I think episodes.
Well, I'm guessing that's the Doorman episode, right? That's the. I don't know. I did not watch.
Now he actually did like that.
Oh, you did like Doorman? Okay. I'm figuring that's the episode people will be most split on, like whether it fits, whether it enhances.
I thought it was hilarious and well executed.
You get a comedian in Byron Bowers and Josh Gad. Again, though, the episode works in large part because Byron Bowers works as Doorman and because Josh Gad is actually doing a really good job. It's also funny to see him, who is not a mega A-list guy, acting as that in this episode, and it kind of makes it funnier that way than if they had gotten, say, like Brad Pitt to do, the episode. So, yeah, I think the episode works where it's placed and how it's set up. But I think that's the one people will be kind of like thrown by a little bit.
Some have said that it reminds them of an Atlanta episode.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So I don't know the one that
I think he said. I think he said
out
7
on or mixed on.
And I enjoyed 7, episode 7.
No, because also I feel like the setup in 7 leading into 8, I think is critical. So actually, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I'll go back, but I believe he said 7.
I think to me, like whether you buy into this show, to me, honestly, really gets determined in episode 1. Because they go for it in the sense of the meta of it, right? So like you either are with that or you're kind of turned off by it. And you're like, hey, I saw the Marvel logo and I came here for superhero stuff. Or you look at that and you say, oh, this is different and derivative and I'm entertained, I'm on merit. Let's see where we're going to go with this. I think it's really one that'll determine whether you buy in or not.
It's crazy that we're 45 minutes into this and there's still some questions or some things that I'd like to sort of discuss. Where would you, if you had a list of shows?
Yeah, it's good.
Because I was thinking about it last night after I finished watching. Like, where does this land?
Yeah,
I think Loki's still number 1.
Yep, unquestionably. Loki to me is that's the 5-star show that Marvel has done. So that's my benchmark.
Would you say Loki 1, Wonder Man 2, was it WandaVision. 3 or the other way around? Loki, WandaVision, and Wonder Man.
So I actually like Wonder
Me
Man
too.
more. But WandaVision's aged
Yes.
well. I think if I look back though, and WandaVision actually shares something with this show in the sense of the hook. The black and white TV is actually a similar DNA of like they went for something. And you either buy into that hook and stay with it, or you're kind of turned off by it. So actually, they have that commonality. The reason I like Wonder Man better is the finale. I don't like the finale of WandaVision because that does become a super-powered fight in the sky between two witches. And that's kind of lame, honestly, in the context of everything else that Catherine Hahn and Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany have been doing. Whereas this show stays within itself and really focuses on satisfying the character arc. And so that's why I think Wonder Man is actually number 2 for me. And I would have WandaVision 3. And then as I've thought about it, I probably would still have Falcon and the Winter Soldier 4. But I will say, like, I did a rewatch on Hawkeye. I felt like Hawkeye was better on rewatch, maybe because my kid really liked it. But like, I just remember having a little better experience with that one the second time around than I did the first time around. So I've kind of moved that into the like, I think that was better than people remember, and might be in contention to be number 4.
Yeah. For me, it would be Loki, Wonder Man, WandaVision. Hawkeye for me fell. I enjoyed watching it because I think they did a good job in building certain situations up. I just think they didn't land the plane.
Well, they ruined Kingpin.
They ruined
too.
Kingpin. I think there were.
That's a tough
Yes,
-1.
and there was the moment with Hawkeye and
Yelena
Yelena.
Belova.
I think that was a missed opportunity there. I just didn't. Perhaps I just didn't like the finale of that one.
It's not the strongest suit of that show either. You're right. It's the show. That's what I mean. The finale with the Kingpin elements, the Rockefeller Center elements. That's a Marvel
missed
kind of. There's a lot of those, right? It's like I feel like if we don't talk about like Moon Knight anymore, but it's the same thing where it's like there's moments in Moon Knight when they're being their boldest in the sort of mind exploration where the show goes places that are interesting, but then you come back to like this like kaiju god fight at the end and you're like, this stinks, man, this is stupid. Like,
I because I especially enjoyed Oscar Isaac's performance. I thought it was masterful, and I think they missed out on an opportunity on showing like towards the end, and I've mentioned this before on the show, how he got out of those situations where he blacked out and was this other person that was able to get him out of this impossible situation. I think they missed out on an opportunity to really show that, perhaps in the season finale, and that's something that could have carried on in multiple seasons to show us impossible things and how he was able to get out of those things.
There's the whole category of those shows where it's like there's something in there that could have been redeemed or elevated, but the execution just winds up being sort of this classic Marvel slop by the end where you're just like, and I have that in that category. Falcon Winter Soldier, honestly, is hurt by that, right? The finale episode is terrible. As you said, Hawkeye, I think takes a -1 because of the finale, right? So there's a bunch of those shows. I mean, even WandaVision, which is as good as it is, like it takes a -1 because of the finale, right? You see a recurring theme. It's only Loki and really only this show, which share the DNA of they don't try to do too much, right? Loki smartly retreats to a conversation, an introduction to Kang in season 1, and then Loki getting his character arc redemption at the end of season 2. And that's what this show does. It's like, it's these two guys, and we have to pay off the emotions of the journeys that they've been on in this episode. We don't have to do that with explosions. We don't have to do that with powers. We have to do it with true to who they are. And I think that's why I say, like, again, for the mutants, it's like, I don't think of, I know like Magneto can do really cool stuff. And like, I know you need effects for someone like Nightcrawler, but it's like a lot of these stories are not made on the acrobatics and pyrotechnics of the characters necessarily, right? It's about who they are, the conflicts, the issues, the times they live in.
And I think for Wonder
that's
Man,
what makes them
the antagonist was those things.
Yes. Oh, so that's the other thing. I am curious to see if this show gets Superman at all, because if you think about when this show is made, it's made over the course of 2021 and 2 and 3, basically. That's when it's written and made. And then Strike happens, delays the finish. They dump it in 26. But everything you see was constructed 3-4 years ago. But if you look at it in the context of today's world, you got this government agency that's hunting down this superpowered individual who's from Haiti. Just sometimes art imitates life, or the other, or life imitates art. I don't know, but I'm just pointing out, like, again, we saw the timing of when Superman was written and produced versus what then happened in the real world region that it would seem to be based on. It wound up being like a political hot rod. I don't know if this show is high profile enough to wind up being that, but I did notice the inadvertent parallel that was kind of created here.
Anything, Brian, that you want to sort of explore before we wrap this one up?
Well, yeah, I don't want to spoil too many of the details because I really want people to actually watch this show fresh and clean and enjoy it. But I did want to leave you with this. Do you think Yaya could be nominated for an Emmy for this? Did he do enough? Or Kingsley, I guess you could throw into this for supporting. Do you think either of them gets a nod for doing this?
I wouldn't be shocked if they did. I think they should definitely be considered as a possibility for those, because to play an actor, being an actor acting in a show and being convincing as he was, definitely deserves a second look at a possible nomination, to sort of, because you got to be able to pull that off. And they did. They absolutely 100% did. And I think going forward, this performance is going to open the eyes of a lot of people looking for the next guy, I would say, to take over a lot of roles. Because if you notice, I was watching Godzilla versus King Kong, and I wasn't actually watching. I just had it on TV. But my wife said, Tyree Henry, what's his name?
Brian Tyree Henry, yeah.
He's in everything. Because that's the guy they call. That's the guy on the list. Right? And and not like, and nothing bad about it, because he's a great performer as well. But it seems like he's the first guy they call, right, for certain roles. And I think Yaya is one of those individuals that you if you're looking to cast, he's definitely one that you sort of give a look to sort of see if he's the guy for your role or your project.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say one of them does get nominated, but I am going to say this is another instance where Marvel did the two of them no favors with how this show was promoted and dropped. If it happens, it will happen in spite of that, not because of that. And I think if Marvel had mounted a full push and realized what they had, there's probably a better chance that one or both of them. And honestly, this should be in the category of comedy, to be clear. There's enough humor in this show. Like, if we're going to call The Bear a comedy, this is definitely a comedy. So
absolutely,
it should be in the category of comedy, which, if you think about it, makes it all the more improbable if you saw the lead of a Marvel show being nominated for an Emmy in comedy. But I actually think it's deserved for one or both of these guys. And that's mind-blowing to me that we're and so it's like, yeah, you're like, Yaya clearly took Black Manta, as he said, for the paycheck, and as he said, it was a clown work. But it's clear he didn't take this role for that. I mean, he took it to really do something with it, and it's been a long, winding road. But I'm really hoping, like I said, I'm really hoping that we do see Simon Williams in some capacity. Not necessarily a Wonder Man season 2. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I think he has now been positioned to, like, be on the board. And like I said, you can just bring him in and I'll be like, oh, all right, I'm ready for whatever 10, 15 minutes you want him to do in this next project. But I'm fascinated. And I'm actually, like, weirdly glad. Like, I never had a favorable view, like I said, of the Trevor Slattery character. And now I kind of feel like that character holds a different kind of place to me in Marvel lore. So credit to Kingsley and Cretton for putting this bookend, I think, on whatever, on whatever journey he's been on. So very cool. Very cool stuff.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to say shame on you, Marvel. Cool. Shame on you for treating this show the way you did. You didn't give it a chance. You considered tossing it into the abyss just for a tax write-off because you didn't believe in it. Now is a success. Now, if you decide to answer questions about it, don't hide. I'm sure you're going to PR it, but we, as fans of this show, will see right through the BS. So, again, shame on you for attempting to disregard this as just another thing. And thank you, though, but thank you for releasing it the way you did.
Ironically, I actually think you're right. The fact that you could binge this show did help it, even though I don't think that's why Marvel put it out that way.
This wasn't a strategy for them. This was just like, hey, just put it out. Just put all of it out.
But I think if you start watching this, you'll rip through 3, 4 at a time before you stop, and I think that actually wound up being helpful to the show. What do you want to rate it?
Out of 5? 4, 4.5.
Yeah, I think I'm 4 with a plus sign or an up arrow. I think that's right. I don't think it could be quite a 5 just because of like, if you think of 5 as like an Andor and a Loki, like there is a level of scale and reach that I think this show doesn't try to get to. The show's not trying to be, honestly, like a 5-star show. But I think it's solid 4, even with a plus sign, just because the leads are so compelling, because the show does understand what it is. It stays true to its nature, and it's original and well executed, and it ends really satisfyingly. So definitely watch it.
Once again,
shame on them.
Well, this is your food analogy of like they taste tested a course in the menu, and they somehow thought this course tasted the same as Echo and Ironheart, and you're like,
I honestly don't think they even tasted it, yo.
You think they just because of what it was, they just looked at it and dumped it.
How can you watch this and say, it's like if I gave you something delicious, you can't tell me that this isn't delicious and put it on the...
That's what I'm saying. That's so weird,
you
right?
Didn't even taste it, yo. You didn't even take a look at it before you made the decisions that you made. You didn't give it the proper treatment to market it and do the things that you do with other things. Yet you dumped it up. You dumped it with all the other things that we have associated with not being as good or not being great, not being given that special touch in the details that they executed this with. So it's just like I'm so like turned off by Marvel, man. Like I can't wait.
You mean the machine? Yes. You're talking about the machine of Marvel.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I'm talking about the machine of Marvel in terms of what they consider dope, if they even considered this.
Yeah.
So,
look, and this is part of why. I think I don't think I'm alone on this island, but I'm just like, I watched this show again with Cretton at the controls, and I'm like, give me Spider-Man over Doomsday every day this year.
It's going to be interesting
for what's going to be a better movie-going experience.
Yeah.
In part for that reason, because like this guy is doing what he's doing, and the Marvel machine is the one running the other one for sure. And you're kind of like,
let us know in the comment section below what you guys thought of WandaVision. And how do you feel about how they sort of treated the show in terms of their marketing and their approach of releasing this? If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But yeah, remember to hit that like and subscribe. And if you did see it, share, tell your friends about it so they can find, I think, something that we believe it was a very enjoyable watch. Remember to hit that like and subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.